I'm Mark and Mitch at the movies. We're going to talk about Wicked, the new movie that's out in the theaters this holiday season. Mitch Brisker is going to give you his review and his opinion on that movie. We're also going to talk about Saturday Night, which is a movie about Saturday Night Live, the long-running television series. And then we're going to be talking about Clint Eastwood's latest movie, and then get into a discussion about 007, James Bond. Where is the script? Who's going to be the next James Bond? We've got information, and we're going to have a discussion about James Bond 007. We hope you enjoy Mitch and Mark at the movies. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. This is Mitch and Mark at the movies, and we are actually streaming this recording on both my channel, Las Vegas Travel and More, and also on Mitch's channel, Scientology The Big Lie. And I want to welcome my co-host, Mitch Brisker. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing good, Mark. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. And Mitch and I, we've done other interviews and stuff on our other channels, but I always thought, we like to talk about fun things. Of course, Mitch, you have a long background in obviously doing as a movie director and film director and a writer. And I thought, I love movies, and I thought it'd be great to do shows about movies, what movies we like, what movies we suggest people to watch, things like that. And also some of the history and why movies are important. Right, Mitch?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. When you suggested this to me, I couldn't resist. I'm like, oh, you want to talk about movies? Sure.
Yeah, no. Why don't you give the viewers, those that don't know you, your background, because you've got an extensive background in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood's kind of a conceptual thing. I used to say, I mean, really, where's Hollywood? It's an address, but everybody's leaving Hollywood in terms of making films. Not totally. There's still a lot of films made in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But I used to joke that because I grew up in West Hollywood, I used to joke that if I grew up in West Virginia, I'd probably be a coal miner, because it's a company town. That's what people do in LA. So I went to California Institute of the Arts. Which
this is in the 1960s, 1970s?
No, I actually graduated from Cal Arts in 74.
Okay.
And I went to work as a commercial director, did some music videos, kicked around for doing that for like 15 years. And I was in Scientology. People are interested in that story, they can go to my channel and see it, or they could read my book, How I Made Scientology The Big Lie, How I Made an Evil Cult Look Good. And so then they tapped me to make films for them, because in, around 63, Hubbard had proclaimed that Scientology wasn't going to make it unless it had proper training films, instructional films. They struggled for 30 years to make them, and they made a few, and they were really laughable. And then they, got a hold of me. I had actually worked on some Dianetics commercials in the 80s, which is how they saw my work. And so I ended up, I thought I was going up there for a couple of months, and I ended up being kind of manipulated to stick around for, the next 30 years. And that turned out not to be a good thing. So, I have a lot of experience, and I never stopped being a film student since the day I graduated from film school. You just never stop. When you love something, you never stop learning about it. So then when you invited me to come on and talk about films, I'm like, absolutely.
No, exactly.
And Misha could not agree more. She's like, yeah, movies, go.
So my association with movies is more as a consumer of movies. Obviously, I was never a movie director, but I also was at the Scientology Golden Era Productions base, and I was involved in some of those early films that they were doing there, and I helped put together a lot of the training materials that L. Ron Hubbard wanted the shoot crew to study. And then we watched a lot of old movies, and I learned a lot of things from that, and read books like The Five C's of Cinematography, which you and I have
Right.
talked about, and
Right.
all that. So, and I've always loved movies too. And as a matter of fact, I was such a consumer of movies that up until about 5 years ago, every Saturday morning, didn't matter, every Saturday morning, I went to the movie theater to watch something.
Wow.
It didn't matter what it was. And then we'll talk about this in later shows, but I just lost interest in going to the theaters because of the stuff they put out in Hollywood right now. So anyway, so we'll get into that later, but that's how I have association with it. And like I said, I thought it would be fun to talk about movies on a channel like this.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the first film that you wanted to talk about.
Well, because of the season and all that, I sort of wanted to mention the film Wicked. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, and it's a fantastic film. And I highly recommend this film. The craft is amazing, and you'll really be transported. I'd never seen the musical. I'd not read the book, so I was sort of coming in cold with whatever kind of a priori knowledge you would have, knowing that it's a kind of takeoff on the Wizard of Oz characters featuring the witches, right? So, but there was one thing I wanted to share with the audience that really was kind of inescapable for me, and that was the film is this grand, really expensive looking piece of escapist entertainment. I mean, you could have probably solved world hunger with the budget from Wicked. And I was thinking, it made me wonder if the film isn't a bellwether for what's coming culturally to our country, because the last time we became sort of obsessed with this kind of grand escapist entertainment was during the Great Depression. And there's just some similarities now. You have a few billionaires controlling everything. Back then, same thing. Then you had a collapse of the economy, and then you had a depression, and then you had a war. And right as all that was starting to happen, you started to see these amazing escapist films that had nothing to do with reality. Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, the Busby Berkeley musicals, So I wondered, I wonder if Wicked isn't a bellwether. And this coming year, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on what are filmmakers, popular filmmakers focusing on, because they're really, all films fall into two categories. So this is just my own personal philosophy. Films that are made for audiences like Wicked, which was very specifically made for an audience, and films, which we'll talk about some of them later, which are made out of the passion of storytelling by a filmmaker who then hopes an audience will discover their work. So you have films made for audiences and films that audiences discover. And that's kind of, everything sort of falls into one of those two categories.
Well, now I have not seen the movie, so let me just ask you a couple of general questions out there as somebody who has not seen it yet. Is it very CGI based, computer generated graphics, or are there real sets and real, you know what I mean?
But the film, in my estimation, they invented technology to make this film. It's not just state of the art. They furthered the art by making this film. It has a seamless combination of computer generated imagery and live sets, which is pretty standard. I mean, all of your sort of Marvel films or any of these big budget SFX sci-fi films or fantasy films, they all have a combination of that. But the art in Wicked is spectacular. I mean, it could just sweep the Oscars, with but I'm hoping that it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's also, like you said, a musical, so obviously there'll be like songs and it has a great score. I take it, right?
Yeah, the score is amazing. I mean, it's not West Side Story, which is my favorite musical of all times.
No, yeah,
but
you're right.
The original one. But it's amazing. The songs are amazing. The performers, the performances, the art direction, the cinematography, everything about this film is spectacular. I don't think it's going to win an Oscar for cinematography. I'll tell you why later when we'll get to it. But stick around to the end, folks.
Okay. Now let me ask you this.
We're gonna do a few a pre-Oscar pick, real quick little.
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. It's in theaters now. I know, when we record this, right?
Right,
I have not
right,
seen it. Would it be
right.
better to see it in the theater than to wait till it comes out and watch it on your big screen TV? Like, is it much
It
more
depends. It
cinematic?
depends. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it depends. It depends on how comfortable you feel being in a theater. Some people don't feel comfortable right now.
Right.
But I can tell you absolutely that this is a film that should be seen in a theater. I mean, I saw a screening at the Directors Guild, which is one of the most technically beautiful theaters in terms of the quality of the image and the sound, because it has to be. So I was really fortunate in that sense to see a spectacular presentation of it. But it's just beautiful. My whole thing with it, I just don't know if it's like a bellwether of the coming age of escapist entertainment, because we're headed into some dark times. I don't know why, maybe it's me, but I was kind of reminded of that, like, uh-oh. But the film is spectacular, is uplifting. The story is so clever and well written, and yeah, there's nothing to dislike about this film. There's one
Yeah.
thing. I have one tiny little criticism that I forgot
Okay.
about. Yeah, and this is probably just me, but there was a couple of times. There's all these. Obviously, it's a musical, so there's a lot of big performance pieces, and the performance pieces, they're what are referred to as set pieces, meaning they rely heavily on moving sets and people flying around, and the sets doing all kinds of things on their own, and it's an extremely kinetic film. And the camera movement, the cinematography, there's a couple of times where I felt it was too busy, so that it was competing with the dancing. It's like, wait a minute, is this about a dancing camera with a person goofing around, or is this a dancing person with a camera goofing around? I couldn't tell the difference, but I think the cinematographer may have gone a few times a little overboard and going like, it's a dance number, I want my camera to dance, because I felt some of that was a little distracting, but
Right.
most of it was absolutely brilliant. But that's just a personal
Great.
bias.
Well, I'm gonna have to catch it for sure. All right,
Yeah,
we'll
for
move on
sure,
to
absolutely.
the next two movies you wanted to mention. The first one is Saturday Night, which also is in theaters, and also you can catch it on pay-per-view, I think, on a lot of streaming services. So tell everybody what Saturday Night's a lot about. You've seen it, and go ahead.
I did. I just watched it the other day. I wanted to watch something mindless. I thought, I'll just watch a comedy. This film is so good. It is so much more than just Saturday Night Live. If you had never heard of Saturday Night Live, if you had never seen an episode, if you did not know who any of these people were, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, Gil Radner, Andy Kaufman, all these people that launched the show.
Belushi,
yeah, especially John Belushi. But if you didn't know anything about it and you just watched the show and you were like, this is interesting. It's a story about a bunch of unknown comics, putting on a TV show. You would miss nothing. It is a completely standalone event. The way that Jason Reitman shot it to kind of parallel this sort of 70s television without, being like heavy-handed about it, was really amazing. And the performances are amazing. I can't say enough about this film. But I also wanted to mention the film September 5. I don't know if any of you have seen it. I consider this to be a very important film, and I hope a lot of people see it. Essentially, September 5, as the subline says, the day terror went live. So this is about the ABC News crew that covered the Munich Olympics in September of 1972. And as we all know, that was the event where the Israeli weightlifting team was unfortunately kidnapped and murdered, and it was broadcast live. This was the first live Olympics, first live sporting event. It was broadcast internationally. So this is the story about this news crew who went from this challenge of presenting the first live Olympics to presenting the first live terror event, and it's an amazing film, and the integration of technology and original footage with the new footage is spectacular. So, but the thing is interesting, you've got September 5 and you've got Saturday Night. They both happen in the 70s. Obviously September 5 was in 1972, and then the launch of Saturday Night Live was in 1975. But it's kind of like, we're in this, all of a sudden there's these two almost like, and in a way, they're both very important films culturally. One of them is obviously about a horrific event in history, and the other is about uh, I don't know. It was. I mean, the film proclaims itself as being the first. Saturday Night Live was the first show made by and for people that grew up watching television. That's a pretty insignificant event. But
Mm-hmm.
it seems like there's a little bit of a love affair with these two films, with 70s broadcast television. So that's another thing that I want to sort of keep my eye on, if this isn't a little bit of a trend.
Well, I was going to mention September. That's September 5th. I haven't seen the film yet, but I
Mhm.
remember I was 14 years old because I
Yeah,
watched the Olympics, on ABC, and Jim McKay, who was the
yeah,
host of the Olympics. We
yeah,
were watching it, and Howard Cosell was, actually reporting on,
yeah.
it went from sporting event to an actual news event. And I'll never forget Jim McKay announcing that they were all dead, that they had
Oh my
raid had
God.
been done and they were all dead. And
Yeah,
I'll never forget that as a kid watching that.
yeah. No spoiler alerts, but
Yeah.
one of the strong story point, which I was not aware of, and it's not going to ruin it for anybody, is that ABC News just went freaking nuts and tried to take the story away from the sports guys,
Hmm.
and which would have been a huge mistake because they would have screwed it up. I mean, the sports
Yeah.
guys were there on the ground; they knew the equipment, so there was that. You get to see that kind of intramural infighting between sports and news. Because news, they're always
I love movies like this though, behind
yeah.
the scenes of real events years
Oh
later.
yeah,
You
no,
know what I
this
mean?
this this will blow your mind. And I have to tell you, I showed it, I watched it with a couple of friends of mine, and they wanted to immediately, as soon as it was over, they wanted to watch Spielberg's Munich, which is the same story, but it's about how Israeli intelligence then tracked down
Right.
all of the terrorists and
Right.
mercilessly just slaughtered them on the spot. And I'm telling you, it doesn't sound like it, but if you're looking for a double bill, so I sat down and watched some of it with them, and I was just completely blown away. So if you kind of wanted to immerse yourself in this experience, because the September 5 goes up to the point where the athletes were murdered, and then Munich starts at the point where they were murdered, and then goes into 1973, where they
Mhm.
tracked them all down and killed them. But the amazing thing, there's a scene, Eric Bana, who is the lead of Munich, he
Right.
has this scene with Jeffrey Rush at the end. I don't remember which one of them says it, but they're talking. Remember, this is a conflict between Israel and Palestine. The
Right.
terrorists were Palestinian citizens, and they were fighting for Palestinian freedom. At the end of this film, is either Eric Bana or Jeffrey Rush says, "There's no peace at the end of this," and here we are going into 2025 with this, however you want to phrase it, going
Still
on.
going on.
Yeah, still going on. And when I heard that line at the end of Munich, of Spielberg's Munich, and the person says, there's no peace at the end of this, I'm like, whoa, no kidding. So if
Yeah.
you're looking for a really not very Christmassy double bill, there you go.
That's good. Those are great recommendations. I'm really looking forward to it. It reminds me of a few years ago. There was a great movie that I think it won the Academy Award in some categories about the Catholic, the Catholic
Oh, Spotlight.
essay Spotlight. That was about
Yeah,
the magazine and the
yeah,
article and the newspapers
yeah,
investigating. That was
yeah,
a great movie. Michael
yeah,
Keaton was in it, and a
yeah,
bunch of other actors. Liev Shriver, and just really, really, I love those kind of movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Spotlight was great. Yeah, that's what kicked off all the rebellion amongst Catholics. I mean, the Catholics band together after that, and had a lot to do with reforming the behavior of the Catholic Church. Can you imagine that ever happening in Scientology?
No.
Could you imagine
Yeah,
Scientologists banding together and saying, "David Miscavige, you can't be brutalizing people"? Anyway,
that's right.
I know we're not
Well, I
here to
want
talk about Scientology,
that's
but
okay. I want to recommend a movie that I've watched for a million years. I've watched it. It came out in 2003, I think, and it's been out around for over 20 years. Love Actually. It is a Christmas movie, but also you can watch it at any time, and it's a romantic comedy about love. And I'll never forget when I first saw it. It's intertwining stories with a huge cast, including Hugh Grant and Liam Neeson and
Oh
Alan
well, don't
Rickman, the people
yeah,
there,
don't.
Emma
I mean,
Thompson. Yeah.
yeah, no, I just got excited looking at this picture. I mean, this is
No,
like you look at these people, they were just kind of like, they were sort of rising stars. They were, and then they all became,
yeah.
every one of these people became like a megastar.
Yeah,
I
Keira
mean,
Knightley. This was like her second film, and then
yeah, and what's
Andrew Lincoln, who then became famous for the Walking Dead series. He's got a small role in here,
yeah,
and it's
Laura
just a power
Linney,
packed. Yeah, yeah. And Richard Curtis was the writer, and he directed
yeah,
this movie. Now he had
right,
written
right,
Four Weddings and a Funeral, and he
yeah,
had written
yeah,
another movie too that were really popular. But this was the first one that he actually directed himself, and it is. I'll never forget it because came out a couple years after 9/11, right? And
right.
the first scene is just people coming in the airport and Hugh Grant saying how, the only calls that people were making when the towers were coming down were to their family to say, I love you, and it just really emotionally hit me from the word go. And then it's
Yeah,
just in and out. It's funny. It's emotional. The love stories are fantastic. It's all taking place in London around Christmas time. And it's just a fantastic movie. And it's one that I watch just about every year or around Christmas time. And I know there's so many people that love it. So if you haven't seen Love Actually, it's on Amazon Prime right now. You can stream it. It's on several other streaming services, but I highly recommend it if anybody hasn't seen it.
yeah, for sure. It's good. Yeah, I think it's one of the ultimate date films.
It is. It is. It's a great one. And then
Yeah,
there's lots of different love stories involved in it, and everybody tries to pick out which one's your favorite one. You know what I mean? And it's funny. Oh, I know. I forgot about the other guy that's in it too. Is the guy who was in The Hobbit, Martin Friedman or whatever, who was then
yeah,
who's been in
right,
lots of movies.
right.
He's like a stand-in in porno movies in the film, and it's hilarious. So these
Yeah,
were all, like you said,
yeah,
young people coming up. The other
yeah.
movie that I just recently saw on HBO and Cinemax, sorry, not Cinemax, it's HBO Max,
Mhm.
was the sequel to Beetlejuice, which came out in like 1986. Originally, Tim Burton wrote and directed the movie and starred Michael
Right.
Keaton at the time as Beetlejuice. They came out with Beetlejuice for October this year. And, the first movie, in my opinion, is a fantastic movie because it was so cutting edge at the time. The art direction, the acting, Michael Keaton was just ad-libbing left and right, and that was hilarious. And I remember watching it with some of the people that you and I know, Mitch, at the theater, and we were just repeating those lines for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Sure.
Well, they waited, almost 40 years or whatever to come out with a sequel, and it's okay to watch. To me, because I really loved the first one, I didn't really particularly care for this one as much because it wasn't surprising like the first one. But if you're interested in Beetlejuice, that type of thing, it's a good movie. It's on HBO Max. They kind of brought it current because they brought Jenna Ortega, the young actress who played Wednesday in the Netflix series about the Addams Family Wednesday, and she's really, really good in that. Well, she's in this movie as well, and so that's how they kind of bring it current. So, did you see this movie?
I did. I watched the screener. I spent 4 nights trying to watch it. I couldn't get through it. It was just a just insufferable piece of crap. I just couldn't say enough bad things about this film.
Yeah,
Avoid, 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 and let's move on.
you got it. Well, the next movie I just
What is
saw
that?
just this. Yeah, yeah, thumbs down. The next movie I saw just last Saturday night, and it's called Juror Number Two, and it's the latest film by Clint Eastwood as the director. And Clint Eastwood is 94 years old, and he's still directing movies. God love him. You know what I mean? He's still rolling strong.
Yeah,
That's him right there with
yeah,
the beard. And he's very old. The movie I saw before this that he actually starred in, called The Mule, he actually was in it, and he looked
right,
like he was 94 years old. And
right.
it was a shame because Clint Eastwood is one of my all-time favorite actors, and he has made some spectacular films,
Yeah.
in my opinion, over the last 40 years. But anyway, Juror Number Two, it's worth watching. I enjoyed it. There's some good performances in it, and there's a great cast in it. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Did you see this movie?
Yeah, I did. I saw it. I thought it was really good. It's Clint Eastwood. He's kind of an old school storyteller, and I don't mean that because he's old. I mean, you don't have to be old to be old school, but he tells these really uncluttered stories about very about forces that have tremendous effect on people and that cause real radical change. I mean, he makes these films. Every one of his films is about some person who's suspended over a pit of flame in some way, and they have to work it out. From Unforgiven to this film. This film, Juror Number Two, as the title suggests, is a courtroom drama focusing on the jury. One of my favorite all-time films is that genre, which is 12 Angry Men, starring.
I was thinking of that movie when I was watching this. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't not think about 12 Angry Men. Very, very, very different films. And this film, it has no spoilers. I mean, it has a very interesting twist on what it means to participate in how being on a jury can affect a person's life, and I thought it was very clever. It has a little bit of a pat ending, like I think you'll know what I mean when I see it. But I really enjoy. And what's his name? Holt.
Nicholas Holt.
Nicholas Holt is absolutely stunning. What an incredible performance. I didn't like his wife. She was a little too naggy. She just nagged the guy. So, but I'm pregnant. You have to get out.
You know what I was going to say about this, and I'm not giving anything away about this. This is the type of movie that when you're done watching it, it invites discussion. Do you know what I mean? In other words, like if you're watching with friends or family, the ending leaves it open for you to discuss. And
Really?
like movies. I like movies.
I mean,
like
it was pretty clear what happened to him at the end. I mean, they didn't show it, but it was pretty clear.
Yeah, but I mean, that's also open. He left it kind of open to interpretation without giving anything away. But I those are the kind of movies I like, though, where you're kind of like going, well, what happened? Like my favorite TV show is Lost, the favorite series ever. I'm watching it now for like the 10th time, right? But it's so much open to a discussion about what does this really mean and what's going on here for sure. And I love that. I used to love going to movies with friends and then afterwards going out and having coffee or get something to eat and talk about the movie. You know what I mean? It's not like a formulaic like a Marvel movie about the Avengers and, and just, oh, wow, wasn't that great? You know what I mean? This, I like movies like this. So anyway, so with this Clint Eastwood movie, it's open for discussion, in my opinion. And I like movies like that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, movies you continue to think about. This is a movie I did continue to think about. I think the main discussion is like, well, how quick did you figure it out? So, because, there's a thing to be figured out.
And here's the thing. I just watched it Saturday night, and I watched it by myself, so I haven't really talked to anybody about it except for you. And I don't want to give it away for the viewers, so I'll have to talk to somebody about it.
It's one of these stories where the main character has a huge.
He's conflicted.
He's very conflicted, and you're trying to figure out why. So I don't want to give the film away. We should move on.
But I was going to say, right after that, you know how YouTube pops up videos for you to watch, right? Here's the making of Outlaw Josie Wales from 1999, and there's a whole interview with Clint Eastwood and the cast and the people, and this is 25 years after Outlaw Josie Wales, which to me is one of Clint Eastwood's best westerns.
Absolutely.
I have three that I really like. Unforgiven, which won all the awards. That's amazing. Outlaw Josie Wales is also amazing from 1976. And then I love High Plains. No, not High Plains Drifter.
Yeah, High Plains Drifter.
Yeah, High Plains Drifter. Yeah. I watch that.
Yeah.
If that pops up on my TV screen, I'll watch it to the end. That's the one out at Mono Lake. They filmed it out at Mono Lake and all that. And that was in 1972, I think it was. And he is just he's just a great filmmaker. He started as an actor, and then he started doing his own movies, and he shoots with his own crew. He tries to keep the same people that know what he's doing, and he always comes in under budget and on time. So anyway, I just think Clint Eastwood's really great. Do you have some favorite Clint Eastwood movies?
Paint Your Wagon. No, I'm just kidding.
I love Paint Your Wagon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
He can't sing very much, but yeah.
No, nobody in the movie. But what's amazing is that Lee Marvin, who co-starred with him, was only 6 years older than him.
I know, he looked a lot older, didn't he?
A lot older, because he drank and smoked, and he died when he was like in his 60s.
But see, what I remember about Paint Your Wagon is it came out in 1968, I think, or 69, right? Yeah, I just remember I was 10 or 11 years old going to see it on the big screen because it was shot in big, whatever.
It was a Cinerama film. It was like,
and it was
massive.
Like, wow, look at those landscapes and all that. Yeah. That's what I remember about that movie.
Yeah, here's a little fun fact. Our good friend, former president of the Church of Scientology, Heber Jensch, had a small part in it.
That's right.
Yeah, it's very small, but right. Anyway, but favorite Clint Eastwood movies. I don't know. I like everything Clint Eastwood did. Probably Dirty Harry, which for me is a Christmas film. When I was a kid, we'd always usually go to the Chinese theater on Christmas Day, and that was a film that opened on Christmas Day. Dirty Harry.
Yeah, and then a more recent film that was great was Gran Torino. Did you ever see Gran Torino?
Yeah, it was good.
Great movie. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. Yeah, we're going to move on to our next subject, which is we're going to get into, and this is James Bond. Yeah. Okay, let me set this up for everybody. Okay, it's December 2024 right now, and there is no script. There's no new James Bond after Daniel Craig has dropped out, and there's nothing in the works. And so there was just an article in the paper a couple of days ago about Barbara Broccoli. And that's her there on the left, and that's her stepbrother, who Michael Wilson. They are the offspring of Cubby Broccoli, who was one of the original producers of James Bond, the movies, back to Dr. No and all that. And they were left with the legacy of carrying on the James Bond movies and the James Bond name. And they've produced every movie since their father died, and so they have not come up with anything, and the reason is because they are fighting with Amazon, which bought MGM Pictures, the studios. But MGM is who has the James Bond. That's where it's attached.
Yeah, they bought the entire MGM library, and that includes.
They bought it all, right? Yeah. So she's upset. The reason is because she's upset with Amazon because their young executives all think that the James Bond series or James Bond movies should be made into like a streaming series that you could watch on Amazon Prime or whatever, and rather than doing a big budget motion picture. They also, these Amazon executives, would like the new James Bond to either be a woman or somebody from another ethnicity, not British, not male. And the Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, they feel it should stay close to the Ian Fleming character, who's a British spy. And so they've done nothing about it, and it's kind of, that's why there is not a new James Bond movie out there. And I wanted to get your feelings on this. What do you think about this, Mitch?
My feelings are, I heard somebody say once that the only two things that are guaranteed to be inheritable are royalty and idiocy. And I think in the case of Barbara Broccoli, she definitely somehow ended up being an idiot because I don't know. It's
go ahead. Let's get you.
Hold on, but I don't like.
Tell it like it is.
I don't like Jeff Bezos either because if I couldn't even watch the second season of The Rings of Power, it was so horrible. So if that's what they're going to do with the James Bond franchise as a series, as a streaming series, that would be horrible. But here's the thing. James Bond is no longer the property of Ian Fleming. He is that character is the property of the world, and the world should be able to mash it up and do whatever it wants with it. And if Bezos had it, well, he does have it, but if he could somehow convince them that it's okay to do a streaming show and it's a flop, it's just going to make people hungrier to see a good James Bond film in the theaters. I mean, I can already see the campaign, like Bond is back, and people will know that that means, oh yeah, that other one sucked. And in terms of having Bond be a black woman, great. I have like no problem with that. I read these books when I was 14. They were precious to me. I saw every Bond film pretty much the day they came out. But would I be like, I'd be like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do with that. That'll be really interesting. We're in a new era. We're in an era where women are ascending. So why not? We're in an era where we want people of color to be seen more so that we can have a more equitable culture internationally. So I'm like, I heard that and I kind of chuckled. I went, yeah, let's see what they do. This could be really cool.
I have the opposite view, okay, because I'm like you. I read the novels, and I'm a big James. It's my favorite movie franchise of all time. If there's a James Bond movie marathon on TV, I'll watch them all, right? You know, but to me, there are certain iconic things about Ian Fleming and James Bond, right? Like when they did. I love Daniel Craig he was fantastic. There's a lot of the James Bond movies they're not that great. But let me finish my point.
Let me just go ahead.
Let me finish my point. But you know, some of the movies were kind of whatever. You know, Pierce Brosnan, whatever. Everybody's got their favorite Bond, right? But when they made Quantum of Solace, okay, after Casino Royale was Daniel Craig's, introduction as James Bond. To me, that's one of the best James Bond movies, right? It was modern, it was this and that. The next one they did was Quantum of Solace. What was one of the first things they did? They got rid of the James Bond music. That really pissed me off. The dun 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 dun. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are iconic things about these films that you have to carry over. Okay, it completely turned me off when they did that. They did some other things in that film too that completely turned me off. And that film was actually written by Paul Haggis. He was the screenwriter for the film, right? So then the next film came out and they put the stuff back in, and I was much happier with it. So if they want to go in a different direction going in the future, I understand, but they have to still pay homage to the whole franchise because there's so many people that love that James Bond film franchise and the book and all that.
Sure. Well, like nobody's saying we're going to go back and change all the James Bond films. They're done. They're done in whenever shape they're in. We unfortunately we have George Lazenby, and we have Timothy Dalton, who I really like because I'm a Timothy Dalton fan. Yeah. And then we have
a lot of people like George Lazenby in retrospect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know any of those people, but I think George Lazenby was Barbara Broccoli's pool boy, and that's how he got the job, or something like that.
She would have been a teenager then, though. But anyway.
Okay, doesn't change my point.
Yeah.
But so she was the pool boy at her father's house, and they were like whatever. But maybe she convinced her father to hire him. And then you had the Roger Moore era, which was when it became like really tongue in cheek, and it was campy, and and then Pierce Brosnan, who did a great job because he's a really good action hero and he's very handsome. And then we get into the Daniel Craig era, and Daniel Craig is unconventionally handsome. All of the Bonds up until Daniel Craig were conventionally very handsome. Yeah. He's unconventionally handsome. And as you know from reading the books, the Bond character was not a handsome guy.
Right.
He was super sexy because he was super sexy. Like he had scars, and he had, he was a rough and tumble guy. He looked out of place in a tuxedo. He was a warrior. And Daniel Craig was perfect. I mean, I thought Casino Royale was the most purest Bond film. But so let me ask you, Mark, you're okay on people writing brand new scripts that never happened, that Ian Fleming never touched. You're okay on that, but you're not okay on having a female.
Well, no, I think they should keep some of the, the music's not that big, it's not that big. You can have a story, but still have the music. There's other things. Well, they brought back the Aston Martin DB5, whatever it is, that car.
Yeah.
They brought that back in several of the movies. And it's a minor thing, but for the people who love the movies it's in there. But here's my other point too. Star Wars. Okay. To me, the first 2-3 Star Wars, the three that George Lucas did, they're put them on a shelf by themselves. They were fantastic. You could quibble about certain things, but they were great. Then he sells it to Disney. Okay, so
Yeah,
now
I know.
Disney's done
Disney's passing
all
around.
these things,
Yeah, I know.
all
Disney is.
these things, and
Yeah.
people love it. People love The Mandalorian, and they love all
Well,
these
but
different features.
these are kids.
I don't, but the people do love it. So I
Yeah.
understand the streaming services going like, oh, well, let's branch off into this story and this story and this story. To me, it takes away from those original films, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Disney
Right.
has handled.
And I'm worried about that with James Bond. I don't want them to go off, on this and that.
What are you going to do?
Now, here's two of her complaints, right? And one was she said that the Amazon people they look at James Bond as a villain, as a bad guy, not a hero. And she doesn't like that. And then number two, they had other ideas, which may be interesting to do, of maybe having spin-off series like about Miss Moneypenny and her life and what's going on, and other characters, Q, and all that. I don't have any problem with that. I just love the big screen. Here comes Bond. He's back, like you said, for the summer of 2026, and who is the new James Bond? I have my opinion on who I think it should be, but anyway.
Really, who's that? Who do you think it should be?
I don't know. I don't remember the guy's name. He's in a new movie that's out right now, but I don't know if you saw a movie called Bullet Train with Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I saw it.
And also the guy was the lead character in a movie called Kick-Ass a few years ago. He's a British guy. He's a young British guy, and he's really good. And I think he'd make a great James Bond. Austin. It starts with an A. I can't remember his name, but he'd be really good. What is your favorite James Bond movie, if you have one? And you can mention more than one. You can mention more than one if you like.
Oh, thank you. That's generous.
Because I have more than one.
No. Well, if I had to boil it down to one, okay, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Just boil it down to one. For me, it's From Russia with Love. Oh,
okay. That's a good one. If I had to boil it down to one, the first one that I saw when I was a kid was Thunderball. And I love that movie. Yeah. And
well,
I love Sean Connery.
No, wasn't it? Yeah.
The first one was Dr. No, then From Russia with Love, then Thunderball, and then Goldfinger was like the one that really took off, right? But I love You Only Live Twice too. I love that movie, even though it's kind of hokey, where James Bond gets surgery to go undercover as a Japanese fisherman. You know what I mean? But that was a good one. But I love Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. That whole opening sequence, wherever he was in Jamaica or the Bahamas, and they're jumping from building to building, crane to crane, and all that. Unbelievable. That was on the edge of my seat. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's chasing that black guy. Unbelievable, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you in two words why From Russia with Love is my favorite, and those two words are Daniela Bianchi.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Who played Tatiana Romanova.
How about Robert Shaw? Robert Shaw was the big guy, with the blonde hair, the super Russian, whatever he was, Yeah. It's funny too, because that's the kind of the one too where they have the bad guys, right? They have the number two, you're number two and you're number three. And then Austin Powers, they kind of use that as sort of like, remember he had the other number one, number two. It's pretty funny. Well, that's the end of the show. We hope you all enjoyed it. This is our first experiment with Mitch and Mark at the movies. We're open to your suggestions. If you've got, movies that you'd like to suggest for us to take a look at, or subjects about movie making that you'd like us to talk about, we're open to your suggestions. We'd like to ask you also, please subscribe to my channel, Las Vegas Travel and More, but also please subscribe to Mitch's channel. It's at Scientology-the-big-lie. And of course, hit that like button and hit the notification button so that when we do more of these shows, you'll be informed when they're up and you can watch them. But if you're a movie fan, we really hope that you enjoy this show. If you've got any questions or comments, just ask them down below. Again, if you have suggestions, we're open to them. Please come into there and give us your suggestions, and we will take them up. And then also, if you'd like to support my channel or Mitch's, you can buy me a coffee down in the video description. Just click on it and help support the channel so we can go see more movies. No, I'm just joking. Mitch, have you got anything else that you'd like to say, before we end off and about this show?
Well, no, this has been great, Mark. I mean, I should mention that earlier in the show, at the beginning of the show, I promised that I would mention why I didn't think Wicked would win Best Cinematography.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
the reason is there's a film, and I know I didn't tell you about this before, so you don't have any slides and so forth, but there's a film out now, or just, I believe it's in theaters now, called The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody. And it's the story of an architect. He's a Jewish Austrian immigrant, or Polish rather, a Hungarian immigrant who immigrated to America during the Soviet invasion of Budapest. And he is the father of what's known as brutalist style of architecture. And it's an absolutely phenomenal film. I can't say enough about it. He's probably going to be nominated, if not win an Oscar, Adrian Brody. It's absolutely going to win on cinematography. And, close to my own heart is they shot it in VistaVision, and nobody shot a film in VistaVision probably since the 60s. VistaVision is back during the day when they were changing formats a lot. VistaVision is, there's a lot of iconic films that were shot in VistaVision, Rebel Without a Cause, but not to get into a whole geeky thing, but basically the film runs horizontally and it's 8 perfs wide. It's the size of it, like a Nikon film frame, a still frame, and it's just so spectacular. The fact that they overcame the barriers, and I've yet to read much about this, the barriers of shooting in VistaVision, and the fact that the cinematography is like, this is the only film I've seen this year that breaks any kind of new ground in terms of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we had Zone of Influence, which was a film that broke new ground, and this is a film that breaks new ground. And I think you're going to be hearing a lot about this film. I think this is going to be, by the time the Oscars come around, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I've known everything about this film forever. But those of you that are just hearing about it, try to find it, make a point of seeing it. It's a long film. I still haven't finished it. I started it 2 days ago. It's over 3 hours, has intermission. It's really, really spectacular. The Brutalist. And
well,
with
and then
that,
I was going to say, I told you about this film that I don't think you've seen it yet, but it's on Netflix, called Emilia Perez, which also is going to compete for a lot of awards with Zoe Saldana. And it's a different type of movie about a really wild subject, but I mean, it's they break into song and dance throughout the movie, and it's not a musical, but anyway, it's going to be an interesting film too, and it's not for everybody, but that's another one that I think is going to be
it's on the list. I'm working my way through these screeners. By the time we do this again, I'm sure I'll see another 20 films, and maybe we'll do some Oscar picks on the next one. So let's do this again soon. Absolutely. It's been great. A lot of fun.
Well, until next time, everybody, we want to wish you happy holidays and a happy new year. You'll see us again in the new year. And until next time, bye-bye.